What if the map of North America was about to change forever? Imagine waking up to headlines claiming that several western provinces of Canada are suddenly talking about becoming the 51st, 52nd, 53rd, and even 54th states of the United States. It sounds like something out of a political thriller, but today a wave of dramatic claims and political reactions has pushed this idea into the spotlight, leaving many Canadians stunned and wondering what is really happening behind the scenes. The conversation erupted after statements from political figures and commentators suggested that frustration in parts of Western Canada has reached a boiling point. For years, provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan have voiced concerns about economic policy, resource development, and what they see as an imbalance in political influence between Ottawa and the western regions of the country. These tensions have simmered quietly for a long time, but recently they have started appearing more openly in public debates. At the heart of the issue is a growing feeling among some Western leaders that their provinces are not receiving the economic freedom or political representation they believe they deserve. These provinces are rich in natural resources, particularly energy, and many residents feel that federal policies have limited their ability to fully develop those resources. Critics argue that regulations, taxes, and political priorities set in Ottawa often ignore the economic realities of the Western provinces. Because of that frustration, some voices in Western Canada have begun exploring dramatic alternatives. Discussions about greater autonomy, new economic arrangements, or even forms of independence have surfaced repeatedly in recent years. However, the idea of joining the United States as new states takes the conversation into completely uncharted territory. Supporters of the concept argue that closer integration with the United States could bring economic opportunities. They point out that the American market is already the largest trading partner for Canada, and Western provinces share deep economic connections with nearby U.S. states. Energy pipelines, agricultural trade, and manufacturing networks already cross the border every day. But critics say the idea is far more complicated than headlines suggest. Becoming part of another country would involve enormous constitutional changes, political negotiations, and public approval on both sides of the border. Even discussing such a possibility raises serious questions about national identity, sovereignty, and the future of Canada as a unified country. As news of these dramatic claims began spreading online and across media platforms, reactions in Ottawa were immediate. Federal officials were quick to push back against the narrative that provinces were officially moving toward American statehood. Government representatives emphasized that Canada remains a strong federation and that discussions about policy disagreements should take place within the existing political system. Yet the intensity of the conversation revealed something deeper. Whether or not the idea of joining the United States is realistic, the fact that it is being discussed at all shows how significant regional tensions have become. In Western cities and rural communities alike, debates about economic fairness, federal power, and regional identity are becoming more visible. Meanwhile, political analysts began examining what could have triggered such a dramatic wave of speculation. Some pointed to ongoing disputes about energy projects and environmental regulations. Others highlighted broader frustrations related to taxation, federal spending priorities, and the perception that Western industries are not always supported by national policy decisions. For many Canadians watching this unfold, the moment feels surreal. The idea of provinces potentially separating from Canada or aligning with another country raises emotional questions about national unity and the country's future direction. Even people who strongly reject the idea admit that the discussion itself signals a level of political tension that cannot be ignored. And as the debate grows louder, one thing is becoming clear: this story is no longer just about a headline. It is about the deeper divide shaping Canada's political conversation. As the story gained momentum, attention quickly shifted to the leaders and communities in the western provinces themselves. What exactly are people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and neighboring regions saying about this idea? Are these statements simply political rhetoric meant to express frustration, or do they represent a serious movement gaining traction? In recent years, Western Canada has experienced intense debates over the direction of the country's economic policies. Many residents believe that their provinces contribute heavily to the national economy, particularly through natural resource industries, but feel that federal policies sometimes limit their ability to grow those sectors. Energy development has been one of the most controversial topics. Alberta and Saskatchewan hold vast reserves of oil and natural gas, making them central players in Canada's energy industry. However, environmental regulations, pipeline disputes, and international climate commitments have created ongoing conflicts between regional economic priorities and national policy goals. For workers and businesses in these provinces, those policies often translate into real economic consequences. When energy projects are delayed or cancelled, communities that depend on those industries can feel the impact immediately. That frustration has fueled political movements that call for stronger provincial autonomy and greater control over local economic decisions. Over time, some of those movements have adopted increasingly dramatic language to express their dissatisfaction. Discussions about Western independence, sometimes referred to as Wexit, have appeared in political conversations before. While such movements have remained relatively small, they reflect a broader sense of regional identity and dissatisfaction with federal authority. The sudden wave of headlines suggesting potential U.S. statehood appears to be an extension of that frustration, amplified by media attention and political commentary. Supporters of the concept often frame it as a hypothetical scenario meant to highlight economic opportunities. They argue that the United States market offers fewer restrictions on energy development and could provide stronger support for resource industries. However, many experts caution that the reality would be far more complex. Joining another country would require approval from both governments, changes to constitutional frameworks, and widespread public support. It would also raise questions about currency, healthcare systems, defense agreements, and countless other aspects of daily life. In other words, the path from political frustration to actual statehood would be incredibly difficult, if not nearly impossible under current conditions. Still, the intensity of the discussion reveals how strongly some people feel about the challenges facing Western Canada. For them, the conversation is not really about becoming American states. It is about demanding recognition and respect within Canada's political system. At the same time, many residents of the Western provinces strongly reject the idea of leaving Canada altogether. Surveys and community discussions often show a wide range of opinions, with many people preferring solutions that strengthen the federation rather than break it apart. That diversity of perspectives highlights the complexity of the situation. Western Canada is not a single unified voice, it is a region filled with different communities, industries, and political views. Some call for major reforms in how federal and provincial governments interact. Others simply want more investment and attention directed toward regional priorities. Meanwhile, leaders in Ottawa continue emphasizing the importance of national unity. Federal officials argue that Canada's strength lies in cooperation between provinces and that disagreements should lead to dialogue rather than division. Yet the political pressure remains real. As economic debates intensify and regional frustrations continue, leaders across the country are being forced to confront questions about how Canada can maintain balance among its diverse regions. And those questions are only becoming more urgent. By the time the debate reached its peak, the story had evolved into one of the most talked about political topics across the country. Television panels, online discussions, and political commentators were all trying to answer the same question: what does this moment reveal about the future of Canada? Some analysts believe the headlines about Western provinces becoming American states are largely symbolic, representing the depth of frustration felt by certain groups rather than a realistic political path. From that perspective, the dramatic language is meant to send a message to Ottawa about the seriousness of regional concerns. Others argue that even symbolic discussions can have real consequences. When conversations about leaving the Federation become widespread, they can shape public perceptions and influence how people view the stability of the country's political system. That is why many leaders are urging calm and constructive dialogue. They emphasize that Canada has faced regional tensions before and has always found ways to adapt and move forward. The country's history includes moments of political disagreement that ultimately led to reforms, negotiations, and new approaches to governance. Economic transformation may also play a role in easing some of these tensions. As global markets shift and new industries emerge, regions across Canada are exploring different paths to growth. Technology, renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, and agriculture are all areas where provinces are seeking new opportunities. At the same time, resource industries remain vital for many Western communities. Finding a balance between environmental goals and economic development will likely remain one of the most important policy challenges facing the country. For everyday Canadians, the conversation about statehood may feel dramatic, even surreal. But beneath the headlines lies a deeper issue about representation, economic opportunity, and national identity. The truth is that Canada's strength has always come from its ability to manage diversity. Different provinces have different priorities, cultures, and economic structures, yet they share a common commitment to building a stable and prosperous country together. Whether the current debate leads to meaningful reforms or simply fades from the headlines, it has already sparked a national reflection on how the Federation works and how it might evolve in the future. And as political leaders, analysts, and citizens continue discussing these questions, one thing remains certain. The conversation about Canada's future is far from over.